And we're going to be talking to folks from then about what's been going on there, and then giving you some action steps of what could be possible the next month, and then some Q&A, and then some closing. In doing those things, we're thinking about today what you'll do is contribute to the purpose, the guiding principles and intentions. So hearing from you what you want to add to this network and hearing your voices. We'll be sharing some insights, like I said, from MSN, and then identifying those main ways of how we can start connecting. Cool. Great. Also, in the spirit of our time together, we have our ways of being. You can see these in your slideshow, that we have practicing empathy, bring courageous curiosity, make space, take space, assume intentions, take the lessons, take care of self and community, and be present. We're here for an hour today, so we think we can really practice these, but just be mindful that we're still bringing that spirit of out of school time here together. In the chat, do we have any responses of what people like to play? I see some things like people like playing mat kickball, lots of kickball, Chinese jump rope. Name is probably problematic, but we know what it was back in the day. Lots of different games. And so part of why we're asking you to bring in these stories of who, of what you played in elementary school is because this network is supposed to be fun. Like, it's supposed to be a space where we keep the spirit of young people at the forefront. We're thinking about who young people are. We're keeping that playfulness alive while also remembering there's something that we're here to do. We're here to talk about what young people need from us. And so we're just, as we're doing this, remember, like, if you're smiling and laughing today, that's great. And if you're also feeling like this is a moment that we need to be thinking about young people and what they need, that's also important. And so I'm going to kick it off to Kari, who's going to give us a really good frame around why a network, why in this moment, and then we'll keep moving. And if you want to keep introducing yourself, talking to each other, and also putting in your questions, I'll be looking at the chat for questions for us to hold at the end that we'll be able to answer. And if not in this moment, moving forward. Kari, all yours.
Thank you so much, Melinda. Welcome, everybody. Red Rover is not a bad game at all. Just got to make sure you hold your arms the right way so you don't break anybody's wrist, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
You didn't hurt anybody, did you, Melinda?
Yes.
I know you did. Okay. All right. So look at the numbers in terms of people coming out today. Really appreciate you all spending some of your afternoon with us. We've been anticipating, well, I should say, for folks who don't recognize me, I'm Kari Milner, one of the co-directors of the Agenda for Children. I also have a lot of my colleagues at the Cambridge Public Schools joining us, as I also am an administrator in that department. And today we're here to talk about the elementary network and to give you some updates and to think about next steps, as Melinda has shared. So we've been anticipating the building of an elementary network for years. We have in our community something called the Middle School Network, which a lot of folks on the Zoom have participated in, and we'll hear a little bit more about that later. But the elementary network is really something we're looking to bring to our community to support our JK to 5 schools, families, OST and other types of partners, and most importantly, our shared students. At the same time, we really see this as something that's needed now, as much as we've been planning for, and we're excited to have the opportunity and some resources to start this network. We are looking at some very serious and diverse needs during COVID-19, the closures, all of the different factors I know that we are juggling and working on every day. And we're trying to figure out ways to respond to the needs of our community. Right, so this elementary network, we're hoping to start some things in June, carry some activities on through the summer, and really launch it more fully in the fall. So we really are trying to be, if you will, sort of celebrating, announcing, making sure folks have a chance to hear as soon as we know what the steps are that we're trying to put into motion. We also know we need all of you to be involved for a healthy network to thrive. That's a big lesson in our work with the Agenda for Children. And so that also is a call for folks to be engaged, to know what's coming up on the horizon and how you can get involved. Another reason for why we want to have a network, and particularly if you think about out of school time, in terms of after school, summer programs, other specialized programs and partners serving our kids beyond the school day in school buildings, as the case might be. We know our young people benefit from opportunities to build identity, opportunities to think about and feel and support different ranges of emotions, to build healthy relationships with adults and peers, to have community-driven and family-driven relationships, and to continue to have time to reflect, to collaborate, to understand what inclusion means in different spaces. And these are all things that our out-of-school time community do also well in Cambridge, and why when young people aren't able to benefit and connect with those programs, we really feel like they're missing out on something. So a big goal of this network is to help to do the important work of helping families, programs, young people, schools, all coming together to make sure that our young people are benefiting from out-of-school time enrichment, quality programming, relationships, and the whole nine. So with that said, I want to throw it to, I don't know what toy Daniel put on there, but my guy Daniel is somewhere in this building. So many different tiles I'm seeing. So Daniel, please take it from here.
I'm catching it. I always like playing catch, and thank you. Still play catch a lot during these times with our fourth grader. So definitely an important game then and now. It's really wonderful to see all of you here. We are really deliberate in thinking about the building of this as a network, because part of what we know in the realm of Cambridge is that there are a lot of young people and families, as Kari alluded to, and then there are a lot of adults who are around and available to support them. And the opportunity and potential with a network is really to think about how we start to connect with intention the different parts of the Cambridge constellation that are so deeply committed to our young people and families. And part of what we really want to be able to hold and move forward with together as we build this network is a way of grounding our work. And what we are going to share with you and offer to you in this moment is some draft, and I will repeat, draft guiding principles for how we move in building this network together. So Melinda is going to share the screen, and I'm going to do a little bit of age-appropriate read aloud for us. And just to be clear, when we say guiding principles, the purpose of these is to provide a shared and explicit foundation for the network by identifying what's really at the core of our work together and what we are thinking may be useful in guiding our efforts. And the reason I just want to emphasize the word draft is because we want your feedback starting today, and we want the feedback of others across this growing network, across the elementary landscape. Because if we are going to build something together with the strength and integrity that we know our young people and families need and deserve, then we need to have confidence and trust in each other that we are coming from a similar place around this. And our families and young people, and particularly those that are most vulnerable, need to know that they can trust us to be true partners and advocates in this work. And so what I'm going to read through is these 7 guiding principles. So they appear on 2 slides. And as I am reading, and then you'll have a couple of minutes after I'm done, part of what we want you to be thinking about and providing some feedback in the chat about is what in these principles is a plus for you. What is resonating in this moment as you think about our elementary age children and families? What's inspiring to you in these principles? What do you like? And Additionally, what we want you to think about is you really hold the realities of our young people and families in grades K through 5. What are the wishes here? What is missing from these guiding principles as you think about what we need to be holding together? What can be improved? So those questions will appear after I read through these, but again, you're thinking about pluses and wishes. So first one we have is equity. We prioritize our actions and decision-making around children and families that have the most to gain from participation in quality out-of-school time experiences, and we direct power and resources accordingly. This includes both centering children and families and elevating the voices of people that are closest to them. Access. We advance permeability across systems and dismantle barriers to participation in out-of-school time opportunities and experiences. This entails actively partnering with our families and children to ensure that they attain the positive out-of-school time experiences they seek now, while redesigning and enhancing our systems to advance access permanently. Collective power. We recognize that advancing change that prioritizes equity and access requires interdependence and collective action. That is, power with. We are committed to identifying and creatively engaging all available resources, human and otherwise. Melinda, next slide, please. We-ness. We maintain a spirit of invitation and welcome for people that are committed to uplifting these guiding principles. This includes meeting people where they are with respect and goodwill. Thank you. Honoring people for what they can contribute, and weaving connections within and across individuals, institutions, and communities to respond. Building on strengths. We identify and build on systems, structures, and processes that are already working or showing promise. This includes noticing and asking, what are we already doing? And what is already working? Young people first. We hold the strengths and needs of children as urgent and take action, even when it's imperfect, to benefit young people. This entails actively eliciting and integrating the diverse perspectives of children and families and continuously innovating, iterating, ideating, and improving accordingly. And finally, and we see these all as mutually reinforcing, innovating to disrupt and build. We imagine and implement new strategies and structures to transform mindsets, disrupt constraints, and break down barriers in order to manifest our stated purpose and guiding principles. I'm going to take a breath. Those are a lot of words. And what we really want to hold and understand from you is some of the nuggets within those 7 guiding principles, draft guiding principles, that stand out to you or that land with you in some way. So what resonates with you? What do you like? What's missing? What can be improved? And our intention is to gather your feedback now, and then we will also be sharing out a public-facing Google document so that as additional ideas come up, you have a chance to weigh in. And as we are growing this network, as you are sharing what you learned, that you're helping other people understand that we want their contributions to these as well, so that we build this shared foundation for how we move forward. So take a couple of minutes and think about pluses in looking at this draft. What's resonating with you? What do you like? And wishes. What's missing? What can be improved? And enter them in the chat as they come to you.
You can see the prompt is up here on the slide. Just a reminder that we are recording because you want to be able to see, for folks who aren't here to be able to see this in the future. So just a heads up that we are recording this.
Daniel, are you looking for all of our comments to be in the chat, or are you also looking for a conversation at this point?
We welcome in the chat, and if folks want to verbalize them, we'd love to hear them too. So feel free to speak them verbally or in the chat. Thank you, Michelle, for asking.
Daniel, I have a question. I'm wondering if we could see all of the guiding principles at the same time, because I think there was some on the first slide that I had a thought about, but I can't see them anymore.
Yeah, I'm going to put them
Yeah.
in the chat.
I'm trying to toggle back and forth. It's hard.
All right, let me put them in the chat so you have them all in one place at one time. Thanks, y'all. See, this is how we build together. All right, there's the first set, and let's get the second set too.
Just asking to look through the chat too if you don't have a full thought yet.
I like the idea of, oh, this is Talisha.
Thank
I
you.
like the idea of the questions, what are we, let me go. What are we already doing, what's already working? So that we're not reinventing things and we're keeping our best practices and not throwing them out. So I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing where we store those and how we revisit those answers and share them back out. And then, of course, I enjoyed the youth people first, because I advocate for that. Sometimes they have the answer that we're struggling to find.
Thank you. Anyone else want to shout out some verbal reactions? And then we'll add some of what we see in the chat before we move on.
That's right. I'll remind folks, feel free to add something if you feel like it's missing or that could be added, if you will. And this is not the only opportunity, but we will definitely take a look at this chat for guidance.
And a couple of things I'll just call out from the chat, you know, similar to what Talisha said, youth at the center, building on strengths. The idea of disruption and the idea of we-ness. Question of resourcing of staff in a way that reflects the value of OST. Collective power and how these principles align with the middle school network, and also reaching all youth, which is focused on teens. Equity and access are centered as a positive. Opportunity to see more about communication and power. Question of how to put them into practice, and that's a great piece we'll come back to. Thank you.
I see a question about where family voices are. So appreciate that being pointed out.
Great. So keep the comments coming as you have them now in reactions. And as I said, we will share these out for continued refinement and revision. You know, part of, to Melinda's earlier point, that in the same way we want to hold the spirit of fun and play and joy that we know our younger children in this city deserve. We also want to figure out how we condense these into something we can all remember and hold on to together, so that we, you know, it's hard to remember 7 things as an adult, much less as a 8-year-old. And so part of our intent is to continue to gather feedback, but also make these really meaningful for us in a way that they do become actionable, that they inform our work together. Go ahead. Someone saying something? All right.
It's fun in the back.
Awesome.
I am curious too, when we talk about the collective voices, what that really, the shared power, I'm interested later in figuring out what that, how does that live out loud? Because I've heard that before, this idea of shared power, and then when it comes down to it, it doesn't always come out like that. So just curious about it.
Beautiful. Thank you for naming that. Yeah. Nelsa, hi. You're on mute.
Sorry, I always do this. Like,
It's okay.
Zoom meetings, but I always do this. So I do appreciate and like the word equity, and it resonates to me in the witness too. But I always worry about our families whose English is not their first language. That's just my worry. Maybe because once upon a time I was a student that, you know, English was a barrier for me, for my mom, for my family, but it worries me a lot about our families whose English is not their first language, and how to access all the great information that is out there.
Beautiful. Thank you for naming that. And so I'll just say 2 things and then move us on. So one is, part of what we recognize is that some of us who are part of who's on this conversation right now hold multiple hats and actually have been or are currently parents or caregivers to children of this age group. And we also were really intentional about the recognition that what we want to be thinking about moving forward is, how do we truly invite parents and families to the table in even the creation of the network, so that from the outset we are holding that as really fundamental to our ability to best serve them and their children. And part of what we also want to be able to really do is recognize that there's so much wisdom and strength in the collective, and oftentimes what happens is it lives in pockets. And what we want to really start to think about, and this is going to take some collective holding over time, is that we want this wisdom and strength to be feeding each other, right? That once we know, to the example now, so that you gave, that you have this experience or you have this orientation towards really thinking about how we best reach out to families for whom English may not be their home or preferred language, how do we then elevate that so that it ripples across the network? And that's the power and potential of a network that we want to hold together. So with that, I'm going to, as we hold this intention and start to think about moving forward, I'm going to pass it back over to Melinda to help us understand a little bit more about the context of networks that we already have in this city. So Melinda.
Thanks. Yeah, and Talisha, thank you for bringing in like that we really wanted to put in the guiding principles in the draft around, like, we're building on strengths. There are already things happening that are working, and the best way to really express or explain how a network can work to benefit young people is to hear from people who are already in the middle school network. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's been around for 10 years. As a proud member of MSN forever, as a program director, and then got really great privilege to be an interim coordinator. I feel really blessed and happy to be able to talk to you about what it could be, but I think it's really important to hear from people who are members Now, in the spirit of being a network, I sent them a text or I sent them an email last week. We asked them, can you make a little video? They said yes. Then we said, well, we're not going to do a video today. Instead, we're actually going to have you talk. I like side chatted them and they all said yes. This is the collective power. This is the sense of we-ness. When you call on people to support you and help you, they say yes. And we just figured out how to build it together. We have Annie on the call. I'm going to ask her to talk first, just to share a quick reflection about what has been the most important about the network, how it's impacted young people, and what she has seen on the ground as a coordinator, but also someone actively working in the group. So Annie, I'm going to have it turn it over to you.
Hello, everybody. It's so wonderful to see everybody's faces and to see all these people here, like ready to go for a whole nother network. I think that there's so many things I could say here, but the part that feels really important about MSN particularly is, in some ways, it's the both the always unfinishedness of it, and the fact that there's so we know that our situation is not ideal. We know that even what we're doing right now may not be ideal, but people are coming together because they're saying we want this to be better, and we know that this can be better if we do it together. And having it not be something that necessarily rests on institutional things, not something that rests on people's specific responsibilities, but more on this collective sense of needing to do better for young people, on needing to do better for ourselves so that we're not isolated. And in a lot of ways, taking where we are right now and just saying, let's move forward from there, both by reflecting on ourselves, by connecting to each other, by really grounding young people and thinking about how their world can be better for them. So I think that in a lot of ways that's meant people sharing promising practices that they're trying, or being willing and honest to say what they're not doing well or what they want to be doing better, willing to be able to share glimmers of what they've seen that's worked. All kinds of that sort of have felt really raw and honest, in the sense that it's not something that's like a finished, shiny product. And I think that will always, even 10 years in, that is what makes it real. It's what makes it authentic and real and the real deal. So I'm really glad that this is finally coming to fruition, and we have even more people and energy and skills and beautiful strengths to bring to that work.
Thank you, Annie. I mean, just bringing that in of it's never finished, and that the way this is launching and activating is because, one, we've been a network together. We've been servicing young people. We've been supporting families, and we're just saying we've been doing it. Now we have to strengthen our ties, and it's never finished, and we have more work to do, and that's what it's always going to feel like. Aisha, I'm going to have you come on and talk about your experience, especially with recruitment of young people in your summer programs, and how you've been able to use the network to get young people access. This is about young people getting into programs, a network supporting them to find the right place. Can you talk a little bit about your experience in doing that and what it's been like as a...
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy about the elementary school network and what it can ultimately look like. It's so exciting. So MSN for me has been like a godsend. So I work for the workforce program, part of Cambridge Housing Authority, and we have a rising 8th grade program for the summer. And honestly, I don't know how we would really get into recruiting our young scholars for our summer program if it wasn't for the space and place of MSN, and getting into the school buildings, working with Majine and Dami to really know which young people will be great for our programs because they've come out to visit and they've seen us in action. And they can actually help us target the certain kids that we know could just really grow from our 6-week summer program. And so I'm just so grateful to what MSN has done, and the space of community and collectivenessism. That was just my own word, but I like it. But I think ultimately in terms of keeping up on the recruitment strategies. So as we continue to send, even in this remote world, sending out emails to the students, Dami and Majine have been great. Annie has been great. And just, we've been able to follow up, touch base, all that good stuff. And it's been an ongoing kind of family connection. So if there's a young person who we're, you know, we're looking at the application and we have any, you know, additional questions, we're able to reach out to any of them and just ask, right? And they're able to kind of, you know, be that liaison maybe between the teachers and the families or whatever, so that we can actually make sure that this is a right fit, but also that, you know, that the young person gets everything that they should out of our programs. And so I think just having that space has been really wonderful. And I look forward to seeing what the elementary school network is able to do.
Thanks, Aisha. Aisha and I work together at CYP, and we've been able to stay connected through this network. It's really great to be able to see that you have community of people who are building together as you go through your career and supporting young people in different spaces. The next person we have to talk is Blake, who came into the network about 4 years ago, and it's been so great to see his role and his leadership from a new program into the city and what he's been able to do in terms of leveraging the network to build his program and give access to young people to an experience they typically wouldn't have. Blake, do you want to talk a little bit about your program and a little bit about what the network has done in terms of building, making a space for your program in Cambridge?
Sure. So I'm Blake from Parkour Generations Boston. We are actually Somerville based, but I count it now as Camberville or Summerbridge, however you want to define it. But I think one of the big things about MSN for us has been the connections that we've been able to build and the links that we've been able to make with other community organizations to both see what's needed and to fill those needs. So whether it's adapting our mayor's program or our after school programming or creating workshops or special events for different programs, but also being able to make sure that we're kind of doing things that are useful for the community and are useful for our young people and that people actually want to engage with. It allows us to keep a pulse on things. And I think we work in a number of different communities throughout Greater Boston, but our heart is always here in Somerville, Cambridge, and the ability to kind of tap into the lifeblood of Cambridge and to really be part of the community is so important to what we do. And to make sure that we're distributing our services to everybody, because there are a lot of people in Somerville and Cambridge that have resources, that have access. But there's a much bigger portion of the population that doesn't have access, and being part of networks like MSN or this network allow us to make sure that everybody is able to get access to these programs, because there are so many amazing programs in these communities that people don't know about. So this has just been a huge piece of it for us.
Thank you, Blake. You can call it Summerbridge. I'm from Somerville. We can put Somerville first. That's cool. I think the piece to really love for Cambridge, but you know, villain forever. The thing to really hold. Thank you, Blake. You gave me one of these. All right. The thing to really hold about, you know, middle school versus elementary. We know they're not the same, right? We know there are going to be things that have to shift and change. Middle school, we're really thinking about participation rates. I'm going to put a number on the screen that every time I see it and it increases over time, that like puts a smile on my face about young middle schoolers being able to participate in out of school time. It's a number that is, if you can see it in a second, 85% of upper school students in Cambridge participate in OST between the years of 2018 2019. Now, we want it to be 100, but because it's at 85, it's because of 10 years of work. Maria talked about what it looks like in the beginning in the chat, like it's been building, but 85% of middle school students are participating out of school time. That's a big deal. And now you're probably like, what's the number for elementary school? We don't have the data. And that's part of what the network does. We start saying like, okay, so we have to find out what the problem is and we design around that. We have stories, you know the families, you know the young people, and so you know there's a need. And we just say part of that, we need to know the real number so we can make a collective effort to be able to problem solve around that and take action. And so part of what the network does is beyond just talking about things, but getting some data to make some good decisions long term. And so I'm gonna invite you in the chat to think about in 10 years, elementary school network, or we're like maybe on Zoom or in spaceships, who know where we'll be. But what will we say is the successful thing we did? What's the thing we want to tell people that we were able to do and to celebrate? What will be the stories we tell? So in the chat, write that. Just do a moment just to imagine in 10 years, what could elementary school families and young people get from collectively all of us coming together to support them? Just put that in the chat. We want to make sure we have some reflections in there and some space for dreaming.
Mhm.
And as you're putting that in, I'm going to turn it over to Daniel to help us like think about what's our next steps.
I'm on mute, but I actually think Kari's going to be a little better positioned to start us off with this, and then I'll chime in after he gets us going.
Absolutely. Thanks, Daniel. And in the name of data, I do want to give a shout out to all the OST providers on this, that the Agenda for Children just put out a survey to get some information from programs. It's called our OST Organizational Profile Survey. We'd like to get you to complete that by next Thursday, and it's going to help us to continue to understand our landscape, our capacity, and sort of our makeup as we continue to get through this dynamic and challenging time. We will also be using some tools and some infrastructure from the Cambridge Public Schools to start to collect more enrollment data through a portal that we're getting ready to launch. So like this idea of data, you saw the number 85%, and some of that is really based off of student voice and also the contribution of programs giving their enrollment data. So it takes a lot of effort, and we've learned how to do it pretty well with Middle School Network. But again, the plug to complete that survey, it's on SurveyMonkey. You should have gotten a link. If not, contact Susan Richards or myself if you have questions. All right, so do we want to just jump into next steps and people can keep chatting? Is that that's where we're at? Okay. All right, so yes, what's next? If we look at the calendar, we know we're on the verge of June. We know that the so-called school year ends in June. And so we are looking at a kind of a finite amount of time to do things this school year. That's not going to stop us. This is what we do. We keep it moving. And some folks have already heard about this concept, but I want to talk about it some more now, of network pods, as you see on the screen, PODS. And our thought and hope, and as I think about the makeup of our community, you heard me reference before, our work with the schools and with the district, our work with community-based organizations, with Department of Human Services, all types of providers across the city. We have to find ways to connect. And as you heard from Melinda, for example, and as she's helped us with planning, she brings a wealth of experience. A lot of her work has been with the Department of Human Services and the Cambridge Youth Programs and the youth centers. Daniel's another person who's been helping us plan. He has a lot of experience working with the nonprofit world in Cambridge. And both of them, of course, also work with the Agenda for Children. And so we cooked up these ideas around, all right, let's think about this concept of a pod. And we're going to start and be kind of limited to the month of June to get a handful of pods going. And as you can see, we're kind of centering them around the concept of neighborhoods, schools, and sort of the OST folks who are most connected to some of those neighborhoods and schools. And I've already done some outreach to some principals, some colleagues of mine in the district, and we continue to outreach with folks across the OST world. So you'll see the three that we are currently planning to get together in June. We like to do 2 sessions, 2 meetings, one really to kind of get to know each other, and then kind of moving into some case management around high priority families and youth, trying to connect them with summer opportunities. And you'll see the first one is based out of the Haggerty community and school. And we will have some partners such as City Sprouts, the Haggerty Community Schools, the Russell Youth Center, and possibly some others. We also are looking to work with the King Open and the King Open Extended Day crew. That will also include Tutoring Plus for Zoli and the Harrington Community Schools. And then over with Morse, we're going to be bringing together Cambridge Community Center, and then the 2 programs that are housed inside the Morse School, the Morse After School Child Care Program, and the community schools. And there could be others, right? And there could be opportunities actually to get involved, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. You'll also notice the concept of topics or issues of shared interest as being another potential type of pod. And Daniel's going to share some more information about that in a moment. The thing I'll mention before I go to the second bullet there is, you know, it's really exciting to have everybody on this, and in particular, making sure that our school folks are hearing and learning about the creative ways that we think behind these networks. I think often it's in the out of school time world where we are consistently pushing ourselves to innovate, and in a healthy way. You know, we're kind of forced by different constraints, you know, the clock, the calendar, staffing, a lot of different things. At the end of the day, we often get in where we fit in, right? But we also are really trying to create leverage, and schools kind of do it from a different direction. But having folks at this Zoom on this day together, it's just a really important step for us. MSN grew a different way, kind of organically in some other ways, but from lessons learned, we really feel like this idea of network pods can get us going in the right direction. Last thing I'll say is, like, the expectation is there will be continued communication and some case management over the summer, and hopefully the pods come back together. In the fall, we continue to add maybe more pods, and then the actual network would launch. So that brings me to the second bullet here. The elementary network coordinator is an actual position that is in the CPS budget for FY21. The school department's budget is going to city council next week for voting and approval. After that, if it goes through, we will be able to create and post a job description, convene a hiring committee, and hopefully then find a wonderful person to be the network coordinator, get to know Annie, hang out with the whole crew. You heard Damian Majean's name mentioned earlier. For folks who aren't as familiar with them, they are our connectors, our youth connectors who do spend time both in schools and in youth centers and other programs. We don't currently have those positions formally in the elementary network, but the idea of having people who are able to move in different spaces is essential. And so there will be other opportunities and, if you will, roles. We do not look at the elementary network coordinator as like this top-down overall kind of director of everything, but somebody who can convene, somebody who can work in a network space. Daniel, how about a call to action?
You read my mind. Thank you. So one of the things, and I'm gonna quote my dear friend Melinda on this, just the reminder that we are the network, that we wanted you here today to learn. So you start to build with us an understanding of what's possible here, start to create a vision around it, and develop some foundational principles. And also that you see yourself situated here in some way. And we know that people have different amounts of time and capacity, and yet part of being part of a network is that you own your responsibility, and we support each other to be accountable around our young people and families. And so what we want you to do in this moment is to think about where you see yourself making an impact immediately. And so we came up with a list of 7 menu items here as examples at different levels of how you may take action moving forward. So one is to join one of those location pods that we named. And one of the things I'll just add about those that you didn't necessarily see as explicitly laid out there is that we want families at the table at those to the degree that we can. So that'll come up in a moment. Kari mentioned the topic or issue-based pods, and these are really things that may cut across the network. So these could be about family partnerships, out-of-school time student support teams, info sharing about children and families, or other issues that the network surfaces as critical for our shared learning. To Neosa's point earlier, it could be about supporting and reaching out to make sure we have equity around language access. That could be one too. So number 3, identify a K-5 family that can help with the network planning and development. This is both about being in service to, but it's really about sharing power with. And so to the degree that we can invite family members to the pods from the outset, we want to consider that. Share an idea or resource, whatever that means to you. Give feedback on the guiding principles. Encourage a colleague to watch this recording, which will be shared with you all and posted on the Agenda for Children website, and any other idea. And so what we want you to be able to do right now is just in your chat, think about, I'm going to do number 1. I'm interested in joining a pod. Or you know what? I have an idea or resource I can share. So you're going to enter the number 4. Or I have a colleague who watched it, so you should enter the number 6. So commit to some action that you think you can take coming out of this in the weeks ahead. As Kari said, June is around the corner. What might you be able to do among these actions, whether it's one of them or more, that you want to name and put your intention behind? So we want you to just put in the chat the number or numbers of items on this list that you can commit to. We got a 4 and a 5. We got a 1 in the Haggerty pod. Oh yes. We got a 1 and a 3. We got a 3 and a 6. We got a 1, 2, 4, and 6. See, this is exciting. It is like rolling dice, Kari. Thank you.
Yeah, shake it up.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate that. And again, you know, this takes the form that your capacity allows for in this moment with the recognition we are growing this together. These numbers are rolling in. I feel like I'm going to win the lottery, y'all. If it works out and I play these numbers, I will share my winnings with the network.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah.
that's the we-ness mentality, brother.
You only get a wee little bit. Great.
Beautiful.
We're going to save this chat and just kind of get a sense of where there's, convergence and sort of think about follow up with some folks. So we, jokes aside, we appreciate you all thinking through this.
So keep entering those as they come up for you. And then maybe Melinda, if you want to invite us to think about any questions folks have in the moment.
Yeah, we're asking you to do so much in the chat. This is like lightning round meeting, and we know the pace is quick. Thank you, Daniel, for all the movements that show us what it feels like probably in your head. Facilitating it feels this way, but we really are intentional about making this clear and direct about what we're doing, and making things bite-sized, because it's really important in this moment that we're clear about what we're trying to have happen. But we know you probably have lots of questions, which is perfect. And so I'm gonna ask you to put some questions into the chat, and we'll try to answer some if we can, but right now we'll also be holding them that we can follow up with more thoughtfulness and intention about what the answers are rather than rushing through. So moving quickly through this meeting, but also slowing down with intention to answer and think about what's coming up for the community, to also see what we need to be able to move forward, and what maybe next steps are around it. So if you have any questions, just putting in the chat. I appreciate everybody putting in their numbers and committing to multiple things in this moment. It feels really beautiful to see, and I can see this network is going to be thriving with that, with people ready to work and help each other. Daniel, I don't see any questions in the chat quite yet. Not that I gave people much time to even type them, but I want to be mindful of time.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll just say, questions are welcome at any point. You'll see that on the last slide we share. And we know that we're all holding a lot. And so it may be as soon as you get off the call, you have a great idea, you have a question. This is the invitation to keep those coming. So what we want to do is play a game to close out. Some of y'all may still play or remember the game Hot Potato. And in three-dimensional space, when we're together, you get the hot potato and then you want to move it on. And so in the spirit also being a network and building this network, imagine that, in the next day or two or whenever it comes up, a child or family member or friend or colleague that's connected with our JK through 5th grade world in Cambridge comes up to you and asks you about the elementary network. So they toss the hot potato to you. What is your first breath, first time, first draft response to them when they say, tell me about the elementary network? And what we're going to invite is you can either share your first breath, first time, first draft response in the chat, or if you are feeling courageous and want your voice out there, name it verbally, and then maybe toss the potato to someone else you see in this call right now. And I'm going to give 30 seconds, then I may toss the potato to someone if I don't hear someone's voice in 30 seconds.
Here we go.
All right, so let's see. So we got a couple in the chat, and I'm gonna pass it, and you can toss it right on if you're not ready. But Marlise, you looked really ready to catch a hot potato. So what's your first breath, first take, first draft response around?
I'm hoping I understood the question correctly, so you can tell me if I didn't, but I would say that the elementary school network is a collection of humans in OST and the schools all committed to Cambridge youth.
You understood it and rocked it. What?
Do I pass it now?
You get to throw it gently. It's hot and heavy.
Go limbo.
I knew you were going to do that. I was just typing in. I missed the prompt. The first thing that popped into my head as a response to the word elementary school network, and I don't know if this is the prompt, was after directly benefiting from and seeing over 10 years the value that the middle school network has added to Cambridge as a community, this is a necessity. I'll pass it to Greg Green. You knew you were going to get it.
Not middle school network, elementary school network. A place where we get to really examine and explore the intricate details of a young person's mind that is not in middle school, which is going to be cool and fun. Xavier Cortez.
Of course. Very similar to everyone. It's just, I don't know, I feel like it's an amazing opportunity and group to grow for families in out of school time, to process and just to create for them and make sure that we're supporting. So that's what I got now. I'm still going to think a little bit more and see what else I could bring.
Beautiful. And Xavier, I'm going to pause you there. You get to keep the hot potato and eat it or do what you need to with it.
Cool, because I'm hungry.
I know. Thank you all. Really appreciate folks stepping up. And, you know, part of what we know is that networks spread when people share them. And so you can play hot potato when you get off the call on your own. We'll supply you with virtual potatoes as needed. And I'm just going to turn it back over to Melinda and Kari to see if we have some final words for folks.
Yeah. Thank you for not making me hold the hot potato. But in that, if you have more questions or anything that comes up for you, you can check out the Agenda for Children website with more information as we put that up. And also you can email me directly, melinda@agendaforchildrenost.org, with more questions or information or things that you are still coming up. Because again, like we know after this, you're probably gonna have 5 other thoughts about like, oh, and this and that. And that's okay. Leaving a meeting feeling like you need to do more is the spirit of a network. The work happens not in the space, it happens when you leave and you still feel connected to the people. So please send your questions our way, to myself or to Kari or to Daniel. We're open to be able to hear from you. Kari, any closing words as we end it?
Yeah, just, you know, again, much appreciation for folks joining us for this hot potato inspired hour. I like that. And I also just want to give a shout out to one of our colleagues, Maria from the Agassi Baldwin community, who responded to an initial announcement of this Zoom meeting by saying, you all are so ambitious to think about launching something in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. And you all are a part of that ambition, right? You all being here, you all believing in the fact that we can do something for our city, for our young people, and for our families and each other during this time is absolutely essential for us to be able to do anything in this time. So let's keep waking up. Let's stay healthy. Let's keep at it. Much love and appreciation across the board. We will be in touch. And please, again, if you need to email or follow up on anything, do not hesitate.